Cynthia here with Halden Gardens Learning to Grow. And it is July. We got the corn up, our peaches are going to be ripe here in a few weeks, and it is time to think of fall gardens. Depending on where your grow zone is, it may be a little earlier that you need to be thinking of fall gardens, or you might have an extra month or two on your hands before you start thinking of fall gardens. But it's always a good thought midsummer to start thinking, what do I want in my fall garden? There are so many options. Essentially anything that you grow in the spring, you are able to grow in the fall. So we have peas, carrots, beets. You have all your brassica families. That includes your cauliflower, your broccoli, your kale, your chard. You can grow anything essentially that you grow in the spring in the fall. So let's get growing. Now, before you begin, make sure that you have a location that is nice and cleared, that hasn't had anything been growing in it for a little bit, kind of your dead space from spring planting. Make sure you have your seeds with you and some mulch, and let's get planting. Here where I live, we are in zone 7A. So thankfully, I don't have a frost until October 17th. Make sure that you check your frost date before you plant so that you know which crops will be ready in time before a good freeze or a hard freeze comes your way. Now, I have this bed already prepped. It's been mulched, it's been sitting here waiting for my fall crop. The great thing about fall planting is that the crops tend to be a lot sweeter than they are in the summer heat. So when you start hitting into your fall months and that cool, crisp air comes, it brings all the sugars up and makes your plants even sweeter. The other great thing about fall planting is you can direct sow a lot of the time. You can in the spring too, but they are going to pop up a lot faster. Another thing you can do is you can start your seeds indoors if you're not quite ready to prepare your area for planting. Let's go. Okay, I have my broccoli here. Make sure that you read the sowing instructions on the back so that you get the depth correct. I also have some dill for all those cucumbers that are coming up that I want to pickle, and I have some pak choi. So good in a soup. All right, I'm going to make myself a spot in the dirt. Just use my hands. Now the seeds, I will usually plant them a little thicker. You kind of want to give your plants about 12 inches, 18 inches apart once they develop. But until then, I'm going to put my seeds about 6 inches apart. That's going to be good. So I'm thinking 6 inches apart, but I'm probably only going to have 1, 2, 3 broccoli plants max growing here. Now, I'm going to cover this up with some soil. And then I'm going to cover it up with some mulch. And I have a few different options for mulch. I have some dry grass clippings that I took from the lawn that are really old. Don't get the new stuff. I have some straw that I can use, which is awesome to keep the moisture in. I also have some very fine vermiculite that I like to put down kind of as my marking spot of where I put my plants. And I'll put some straw in here just to keep the ground wet. To make this successful, we got to make sure we keep this area nice and moist. So we are going to make sure that we are watering probably every day just because of the summer heat and making sure this ground is moist until the seeds pop up. And that generally takes about, depending on your temperatures, it will take about a week, sometimes 2 weeks if it's too hot. All right, notice how I am watering. I have a nice soft head that sprinkles the water down, and I'm going back and forth. I don't want to drown out my seeds. I'm going to stay here and make sure that the ground gets nice and moist. You can also use a nice soft sprinkler, but we're going to do this for about, if you had a sprinkler, I'd probably do it for about 5 minutes. But just with my hose, I'll probably sit here for about a minute. I'm going to do this every day until I start seeing those little sprouts come up. If you overwater and you make the ground too saturated, the seeds won't pop up. So if you're noticing your seeds aren't popping up, maybe give a day or two without watering and see if those seeds will germinate. Another reason why seeds may not be popping up, again, is due to heat. So if your days are above 95 or 100 degrees like my days are right now, it may take a little longer for these seeds to germinate, and that may be a great time for you to do indoor planting and start your seeds indoors. So here are some fall basil that I planted. I planted these a couple weeks ago. They've just started to germinate. I'll be thinning them out here soon. They're just starting to have their baby leaves. We're waiting for some true leaves. And I plant fall basil too because, as you know, basil will bolt pretty quick if you're not taking care of it. So I always like to do a mid-season plant of basil just to make sure I have some good basil going into fall. Something I also like to do, I like to use sprinkler flags to mark where I have planted something in my garden because I don't plant things all in the same spot, especially in fall garden. So just to make myself remember I need to water here or take care of these little plants or people not to step here, I'll use a sprinkler flag.